Fishing Planet is the popular free-to-play fishing game that was first released back in 2015. The Fisherman is the buy once spiritual successor to Fishing Planet, or is it? In order to understand just what the Fisherman is about, we have to look at the state of Fishing Planet prior to the Fisherman's release. One of its biggest gripes were, and still is, the excessive number of microtransactions, without which meaningful gameplay is just not possible. The retention rate of players therefore dipped as a result, but where this hurt the most really was the fact that Fishing Planet was just not able to retain new players. That's where the Fisherman comes into the picture. The Fisherman is the studio's buy once play forever version of Fishing Planet, without any microtransactions or pay gates. It launched in late 2019 with a host of new gameplay features exclusive to the Fisherman, except they weren't, but more about that later. Let's have a look at the game itself. Is it worth playing? The Fisherman has a vast map of fishing locations, with 12 of these in North America alone. It is neatly detailed and each location shows you the relevant information such as brief descriptions, a weather forecast, list of fish species available in the area, what type of lures and baits those species are typically attracted to, and more. Fishing locations each have their own required fishing licenses, which do have certain once-off in-game currency costs. However, these are typically low and far cry from Fishing Planet's baitcoin system that required real-world currency. There are a further 7 locations in Europe, and these also feature the new bite system. Players of Fishing Planet will remember that fish locations were not really dynamic, and as such, certain farming spots became the go-to method for catching fish. In these European locations, the new dynamic fish spawning and biting system was implemented, and makes for a far more realistic fishing experience. Fishing Planet has since implemented this feature in the American fishing locations too, but the Fisherman still has this disparity between American and European waterways. Another exciting and long-awaited feature is the new mission system. It provides a steady stream of missions, or achievements if you will, to keep you busy and goal-oriented if you're out of inspiration or you like working towards something specific. These missions are divided into exploration, mastery, as well as monster missions, and each has their own criteria and related follow-ups. Fishing Planet players will be familiar with the leaderboard and competition systems, which are largely the same in the Fisherman. Basic leaderboards per fish species or per lake can be shown, and there is now a common screen from which to access the competition and tournament features. Competitions are played in real time against other players, with tournaments taking a similar format but spanning over several days. As for DLC, well, not everything always makes perfect sense. In a pay-once game, you wouldn't ideally expect to see gear and equipment purchasable via pay DLCs, as is the case here. The interface for buying these DLCs is also lackluster and devoid of detail, and from the DLC screen you can only see group pictures of what each DLC gives you. The in-game shop interface is largely unchanged from the Fishing Planet version and contains categories for all of your equipment, tackle and bait. There is an extremely wide array of rods, now including feeder, bottom, carp and spot rods. The same can be said for reels. There is also a healthy variety of baits, lures and jig heads, which can be combined with soft plastics. There are unfortunately no rigs available in the Fisherman, so if you are hoping to set up a Texas or Carolina rig, you're out of luck. Ground baits are moderately well detailed and allow you to combine a base with particles and aromas to make your bait extra attractive to the fish in the area. Trolling is now available as well and can be done from a boat that is adequately equipped with rod holders. In addition to these, you can also lay your hands on various different kayaks, motorboats and bass boats. Each one has a certain max speed and passenger limits, although for some reason the game thinks bass boats only hold one person. Not entirely legit. The inventory system is another familiar aspect from Fishing Planet, but it works well. On the left you have your active rods and the setups, with your available gear on the right. Hovering over each element gives you more information. When fishing, the in-game map tablet is very helpful in finding deep spots to cast your weighted bait. However, the map only seems to distinguish between deep and not deep, so it's not always easy to know what depth you're working with beforehand. Bottom fishing itself is a fairly good experience, with the option to use rod stands for multiple rods. While the more expensive rod stands do have electronic bite alarms, the cheaper ones do not, and you'll have to make do with the little clip-on bells that you attach to the tip. Bites come reasonably quick for bottom fishing, but it is a game and you can't really expect full realism where you'd sit and watch the rod for hours on end. The fish fighting mechanics and physics feel really good, and the rod behaves pretty much like you'd expect it to. After successfully landing a fish, you're able to take some pictures of it or even post one. Gotta get those Instagram likes. Lure fishing feels pretty good and has several different retrieval methods. My favorite one is the stop and go, although every fish species has its own preferred retrieval method, at least according to the game. In reality though, I found little to no difference between the retrieval methods when it comes to actual bite rates. The one exception, of course, would be the top water lures, which do require very specific movements in order to be effective. When it comes to fish fighting, there are marked differences between the different species of fish. Some of them are by nature more aggressive and prone to put up a fight, and this is reasonably well simulated in the game. Trout and smallmouth bass especially have a habit of taking a line for a run, and that is certainly the case here too. They also try to do the quick turnarounds to get the slack in the line, after which they will try to shake the hooks, and they are often successful. Lastly, we have the option to do float fishing as well. As with all the other types, you need to take special care in selecting your bait and hook size, as you may find that fish only nibble at the bait if the hook's too large. Switching to a smaller hook increases your chance to get a committed bite and a solid hook set. The implementation of boats is okay. It's not great, it's not bad, but it's okay. Movement feels a bit too sluggish and quick reactions don't really pay off, and I think it could use more polish. The fact that you can't turn fully around while seated is also quite bizarre, but boats do allow you to fish in spots you wouldn't normally be able to reach from the shore, so they definitely have their use. As mentioned before, trolling is also possible and can be done quite easily by casting your rods out behind the boat and then placing them in the boat's rod holders. Just don't use bottom rods like I did in this example, people will look at you funny. So the question everyone always asks, is the game evolving and being updated? Sadly, the answer in this case is a resounding no. The developers have not touched the Fisherman since its launch. So, should you buy this game? It depends. If you want a good, solid fishing game without microtransactions, then my answer would still be that the Fisherman is absolutely worth a buy. It has good mechanics, solid features, and a friendly player base. The developers are still actively updating and adding to the fishing planet, but it's so riddled with microtransactions that it generally just ends up leaving a sour taste. At the end of the day, the prospective player is left with a choice between the two games. Either active development with microtransactions or zero development without microtransactions. Both have drawbacks, but for a brand new player, the Fisherman will almost always be the better of the two. That then brings us to the end of this review. As always, it's been a pleasure chatting with you all. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see more gaming related content from my channel, and feel free to head on over to twitch.tv/actorsoul for my weekend streams when you're next having a quiet pizza night. Until next time, take care.